Hello, and welcome to Talkin Tabletop at Immortals. I'm Nate.
And I'm Lane.
And today we'll continue our discussion on the rules for Warhammer 40k Kill Team.
Are you ready for deployment?
Let's do this. So on our last episode, we got into a lot of the rules for actually playing the game, and we stopped at the close combat part of it. If you'd like to see our discussion on the rules previous to this, we'll have a link to, I think, in the description below. But let's just jump into the close combat, because it varies it differs a whole lot from, this is I think where Kill Team also took a huge departure from the actual 40k, and wherein combat I like a lot better than even in 40k.
Yeah, it's like its own little mini game.
Right.
And because you only have maybe 5 to 10 models on the table, you can take more time in individual combat.
Right. I mean, it would be clunky if they were to throw this system into the 40k, but I do like what they have done with the close combat. Because before, close combat used to be if you had a melee heavy army or melee heavy kill team, you were pretty much going to wipe the floor with anybody who wasn't melee heavy. In this one, even though melee heavy will still definitely have an advantage, the way in which it's set up, I think, actually makes it a little more balanced, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I first noticed the first time we played it is that, in typical Warhammer 40k and 40k proper, you have an armor save for each model. Your models have some kind of armor, so whether they're shot or attacked in close combat, they get to make an armor save. Interestingly, in this game, the close combat is just an opposed roll between you and your opponent, and the armor doesn't actually come into it. There are other things that contribute to how strong a model is in close combat. But your armor save isn't there for the close combat. It's there for shooting, but not in the close combat phase.
So we might as well, I guess, describe exactly how it works. So you have your model charges in to the other model, your opponent. I think we went over charging in the last one, but if not, basically you declare that this model is going to charge that model. You roll 2 6-sided dice. If you roll higher than the amount of inches needed to get into base contact, you made the charge. If you didn't, your charge didn't go off. But once you do get into close combat, you take your attack value and you roll that many 6-sided dice, and your opponent rolls at the exact same time his attack value. So obviously a more melee focused army will have much more attack dice than one that isn't, but after rolling all of them, you're looking for successes, basically how many of your dice rolled above your weapon skill. And based on that pool of dice, you start to allocate the dice. Like, okay, let's say I had 3 dice to roll, and I rolled, 4, 5, and a 6. Make it easy. They're all hits. Now the 6 is a critical, the other 2 are not. I will put forth my critical first and say, look, there's my critical hit. Now, the opponent then has to decide, do I block that with 2 regular successes or 1 critical success, or do I absorb that and try to swing back at you? So it's basically trying to, I guess, have a bigger dice pool. And again, I like the balance part of it is that even if you have more dice to throw, the chances of you having a crappy roll and not being able to. Before, it used to be, if I were to get in close combat with my Astra Militarum, the chances of me winning that close combat was pretty slim. Pretty slim. Every now and again, if I had like a special weapon or something, I might be able to pull off a win, but normally they would get tore apart. In this one, though, I noticed close combat is deadly, but it's also a lot more fun to play.
Yeah, well, I think one of the games we played, I had Death Guard Space Marines. They're Chaos Space Marines. They have really strong armor, and our guardsmen had very little armor, were not very good in combat, typically in 40k proper. But when I charged my guys in and fought, you ended up doing a lot more damage to me than expected. And again, like Nate was explaining, there's this almost mini game where you take turns putting forth a dice to either counter the attack that your opponent has made, or to absorb that attack and then let your die go through them. So it adds another layer of tactical thinking, another layer of strategy.
But that does bring us to a good point. We didn't really talk about the difference between old kill team and new kill team is the wounding system. Now, an old kill team, it used to be you'd have 1 or 2 wound models, sometimes like a 3 wound model, like an Ogren or something like that, but that was like a elite thing. In In this one, instead of having wounds and then when you lose a wound, rolling to see if they're injured or if they take a flesh wound or whatever it may be, that was pretty tedious in the last one. In fact, in my opinion, it was excessively tedious.
It was just more to keep track of.
Right,
your model could be wounded and have a flesh wound and also be shaken, and you have to see if he comes out of being shaken and see if he kills the flesh wound or does the flesh wound affect how he performs. It's just a little too much.
Right, and it kept adding negatives to all your rolls and everything. And so pretty much, and I understood the concept of it. As your guys become wounded, they become less combat effective. That makes sense. But I mean, we're also talking about space elves and space dwarves and crap like that. So I mean, the realism that they threw into it, so all right, really didn't add to the game. It just made it more clunky. Because you could have a model that was literally, it should be dead. It should be dead, but you get really lucky on these rolls and it just gets a flesh wound, and just is longer than it needs to be. So in this version, they gave a set number of wounds, which is, depending on the model, some of them are, 10 to 15, others are in higher 20s, like Space Marines, I think have like 18, 19 wounds or something crazy. Like it's much higher. But the damage of the weapons is a set amount. So if I, let's say, punch you with a power fist, it's going to do X amount of damage each time that strikes you. Whereas like a knife doesn't do as much. So the weapons themselves do more damage depending on how, I guess, lethal they are. But in this one, instead of rolling each time when you lose a wound or whatever, once you get to 0, that's it. That model is taken out of action. It's no longer combat effective and it's removed from the board. So I do like that a lot. I think that streamlines the way that the game is played, in my opinion. Instead of rolling all these other dice to see if this guy's taken down, it's just boom, I'm at 0 wounds now. Okay, this one's done.
Yeah, and definitely in the past in Kill Team, I understand the reason for creating these flesh wounds, and it's not dead yet and it's still alive, because when you're dealing with a small number of models, you get to be a little more precious with them and hope they survive. But I've always thought the best way to handle this, instead of having a model that has 1 or 2 wounds, like in Upper, give them 6, 8. That's exactly what they did. It's almost like they listened to me.
Yes. Well, also though, with the previous adaptation of this game, it was more along the lines Warhammer 40K, scaled down with it was like bolted on. The rules were 40K, but with these rules bolted onto it to make a small skirmish game work. Because in a typical 40K, it doesn't scale down well and it doesn't scale up well. It works perfectly around 1,000 to 2,000 points. Anything smaller than that, it just, the rules are too just not designed.
Yeah, they're just not tuned to that size of a game.
It would be, if you played such a small game, it would last 15, 20 minutes and be pretty boring. If you played a huge game, it would last 6 to 7 days. It would be probably exciting, but pretty boring too. So I'm glad that they completely flipped the script and said, okay, we're going to make Kill Team its own. And this combat system, I truly enjoyed in it because I saw the potential of it, of even the non-fighty, fist-fighty armies of, every now and again, you get that lucky shot in. And it will happen a lot more often, like with throwing for a dice pool than it would for just having attacks that you hope you'll score 6 on or something. I liked it a whole lot. And in the rules themselves, there's also rules for helping out, like if you have more models surrounding a different enemy model. There's a lot of rules to it, but they're not clunky. They're not, like, they make sense, and it, in my opinion, adds to the overall game much more than anything else.
I mean, typically in 40K proper, if I ran 5 of my Space Marines up against 10 of your guard, Space Marines just plow through them, just destroy them almost. This gives a little more balance, even though some models certainly are stronger than others. You're never really in a position where you feel useless or unable to do anything.
And I like how the close combat weapons themselves have some pretty nice special rules to them. Like power fists, they do what they should do, as far as the fluff goes. I mean, you have this gigantic metal fist that can crush tanks. Like, it should be able to do quite a bit of damage, and it does. And also the rules for it are, if instead of just rolling 6 as criticals, 5s and 6s are criticals. So it doubles, in a sense, doubles your chances of really hurting your opponent. And it makes it, and the fact that there's no more point system as far as equipping your people. They just say, okay, this is what this person has, this is what this person has. You can give them this, this, and this. It doesn't cost you any points or anything. So you can armor up your guys however you wish. So a lot of times in 40K proper, I'm not going to put a power fist on a sergeant or something like that just because it's not worth it. Like, guy will get killed, and that's 10 points worth of equipment that is thrown out the window for a little model. But in this game, points aren't there. Toss it in. It lets you build really unique models too. The hobby aspect of it is that you can now really customize these models, stuff that you normally would never put on a model on the big board. It wouldn't do you much good. This one, it's like, you want to make a medic, something I would never put into unless it was an extremely fluffy game. Like, I wouldn't put medics in, they're not worth it. But in this game, it is. So you get to make that model up and paint it up, and it makes the hobby aspect of it even more interesting and gives personality to it all too.
And the way you build the list gives you a lot of balance. For example, when I played a game with orcs, there's 8 or 10 different orc specialists you can choose from, but you can only choose each of those once. So sometimes you'll run into, when you're playing 40K proper, somebody will spam something, and it's fine. But with this game, you're not able to do kind of on rails with how you choose your army. You still have some options and the different things you can select, but it's not going to let you build a ridiculously powered army.
And gone are the days, even with the previous edition, where you would have, I know for guard lists, like in the tournament aspect of it, you would have like 9 plasma guns in it. Because you could. The rules were there that you could finagle guard lists to have like all these special weapons in it, which, makes sense because guard are kind of weak and everything. But at the same time, it's like you said, it kind of just spammed it out. And I like the aspect of saying, okay, you're making an army list, you have X amount of soldiers. These are the ones you can choose from. This is your army list. Like, it doesn't matter point wise or anything like that. You choose these 10 models, 5 models, whatever size the different type of army is. Equip it however you wish according to the rules that we give you, and that's your kill team. You don't have to keep track of, like, I can say, okay, I'm bringing a kill team with me, and you're like, okay, I'm bringing a kill team as well, and there's no upscale or downscale to it. Like, you don't have to set a point limit. You just say, okay, bring this kill team. So I really like the game overall, and on paper, reading the rule book, I was really excited about it down on the table.
But I want to thank Immortals for hosting us here in Rocky River, and encourage all you guys to come down to the dungeon here and pick up a Kill Team or any other game that you're interested in. And if for some reason they don't have it here, the staff will be glad to order that for you so you can get it.
There is also plenty of tabletop space here for you to play games. They actually added on an entire back wing, you could say, of Immortals, where it's nothing but tables. So there is plenty of room. Come on down and bring a friend, or call up here and find out if anybody else is playing the game that you're looking to play.
Plenty of terrain as well.
Yes, lots of house terrain, and not just like, books with sheets on them and stuff, like actual nice terrain. Also, if you have any questions for Lane or I, drop us a line on Discord. If there's any tabletop game that you are interested in, again, drop us a line. We're here to answer your questions and give our 2 cents on these games. So join us next time, where we will talk about how the game actually plays on the tabletop. Now that we went through all the rules and theoretically made everything, it's time to see how it plays out in real life. So then,
have a good one.